Before we get started, this video is sponsored by FaB Foundry, one of the first Flesh and Blood specialized game stores in the world, a pillar of the local FaB community in Portland, Oregon, a world tour organizer, and my personal favorite LGS. FaB Foundry is your one-stop shop for all things FaB related, whether that's singles, sealed product, playmats, sleeves, dice and tokens, especially featuring products from Metal FaB and Thai cards. FaB Foundry also offers a rewards program which you can use to get store credit back on all your purchases. So please go check out FaB Foundries, support our local community in Portland, and use our promo code FleshandBad for a discount on your next singles order. Hey everyone, welcome back to more Flesh and Bad, and today I wanted to try playing some Tuffnut. So I actually just got back from my pre-release where I was playing Tuffnut to some big success, so I wanted to actually give him a shot in CC. And I think in CC he's in a really interesting position because I don't really fully know like what kind of the strength of this hero really is, so we're going to kind of find this out together. I think that Tuffnut is primed to be pretty good into decks that have like one very big tall attack. I think outside of Lyath, you can like obviously like intimidate the attack and stuff, but he seems like he's going to be pretty good into potentially like Pleiades, maybe the old KO rather, and maybe some of the other Guardians if we kind of see a resurgence of that. What I think Tuffnut might end up struggling into is, however, like the Wizards, the Earth heroes, and just some of the heroes that are able to kind of get around the toughness tokens, like anything that's super low to the ground. I think he also might struggle into. So I kind of want to give him a shot today and kind of just see how he performs into kind of like a variety of decks. So the list I have here is pretty interesting because I think that there are a lot of different directions you can kind of go with Tuffnut. There is kind of like the super fatigued Tuffnut, where you're basically trying to make as many toughness tokens as possible, and then you're trying to block your opponent's attack, basically go down to like no cards in hand, and then kind of basically just run your opponent out of threats, which I think is like a super viable strategy. The only problem with that is that there are a lot of decks in the game that are able to kind of get around that, mainly either through like arcane damage, intimidate, just like going around your toughness tokens. So like even just playing like low attack, like a bunch of repetitive like low attacks can also kind of set you up to be in a very bad spot as Tuffnut. So what I wanted to try today was to kind of do like a little bit of a hybrid between kind of like the more fatigue style Tuffnut and also kind of have an aggressive package in the board to kind of deal with the decks that I think are going to be pretty potent in the upcoming meta. So that's like Kano, Verdance, Florian. I guess Lyath is also I think going to be pretty good. Lots of decks I think are gonna be able to shine in the upcoming like ProQuest season. So for this list, I wanted to have kind of a mix. This is basically the main deck, like the core cards I just don't think you can cut. Again, we're on Romping Club, so this is kind of like more of like a yellow line build. I think there's also kind of potential that you can get away with less blues in the deck if you really want to. But I think about 12, maybe even less, is probably about where you want to be. I wanted to talk about kind of some of the like bread and butter combos, I guess, of Tuffnut. So I think the kind of the like late game fatigue combo that you want to kind of try to set up against some decks is like Old Favorite plus the Never Give Up. So you can basically just like keep putting the Old Favorite on the bottom and then like keep blocking 6 with it. So that's like a pretty good combo. And then we also just have like some of the good kind of like Tuffnut value cards. So we have we have Disarm. I think this card is like kind of insane. So if you can make 3 toughness tokens, then you draw into Disarm, block with it. You can basically get your opponent to kind of intimidate a card out of hand or like get rid of a card out of hand, put it on the bottom, which is really powerful. In the main deck, we're also running some cards to kind of synergize with toughness tokens. So Heroic Grit basically turns your toughness tokens into attack value, which is also really kind of appealing. So you can set up like a Humble Entrance plus a Heroic Grit. That's kind of like the combo you ideally want to try to go for. You can also kind of set this up with like Diggins and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of like a kind of like another angle to basically kind of try to generate toughness tokens. And then in the board, we kind of have some kind of a mix of game plans here. So we have the Wild Ride and the Buck Wilds to kind of be a little bit more aggressive into certain decks, but we also have kind of like this more kind of defensive package for decks where we want to be maybe just a little bit slower and kind of just grind our opponent out as opposed to trying to go a bit faster. And then we also are going to be having, I guess, just some decent threats. So we have like CNC for very defensive decks, and we also just have kind of like our late game package of Never Give Up in the board. So that's kind of where I'm at with Tuffnut. I think that there's a lot of merit to maybe just playing like the kind of like fatigue style list where you're basically just doing one game plan to everyone. But I think that a lot of people are starting to kind of understand how to play around Tuffnut. So I'm kind of hesitant to think that that game plan is going to be like super good. Like if you can just send a bunch of small attacks, or like there's a lot of ways to actually get around kind of like the fatigue Tuffnut kind of style strategy. So I wanted to kind of take a different approach and kind of just test it out, see how it performs. So yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and try to get some games. Playing against Akatsu, so this is one of those decks that I think is going to be a bit more aggressive. We might end up learning some things from this game. This is one of the matchups where I think Tuffnut might struggle a bit. Yeah, so let's go ahead and Romping Club. So unfortunately, this agility is probably not going to matter, but that's fine. All right, pitching us a Glow. A little bit unfortunate. Maybe it's showing my bad Tuffnut deck building. All right, let's Tuffnut, see what we hit. All right, we hit a 6 finally, so that's good. All right, so now I think this is a fine opportunity to just use the No Hero Stands Alone. So now we can Clash and potentially give this a -3. Alright, hitting the Cast Bones, definitely unfortunate. I might have accidentally built like the worst Tuffnut deck of all time. Alright, I think I'm going to go back to the drawing board on this deck a little. I might have gotten a little bit too cute with like the Oasis and the Sync Polo, so I might try to trim on some of these. Although I do think there's like some merit to running these. I gotta kind of think this through maybe a little bit longer. So Tegan can probably make a time lapse out of me kind of looking through various Tuffnut lists. So I think I've actually adjusted the deck to be maybe a little bit better. And this has been maybe kind of like my first attempt at Tuffnut deck building, which I think the deck building here is actually like really complicated for some reason. So you definitely want to try to, I think, minimize the number of non-6s. Like we kind of saw in that first game, I think I just like was running way too many like non-6s in the deck, so maybe that was part of the problem. So what I've done is I've tried to trim on the never give ups, and then also trim on the sinks, just trim on any of the non kind of 6s in the deck. And I also cut kind of some room out of the sideboard. So I think I originally had Rock in here for like more fatigue matchups, but I feel like against fatigue matchups we're maybe like just winning anyways. So I kind of wanted to maybe focus on kind of like the main game plan, which is kind of like the all 6 game plan for the most part. And I want to kind of give this a shot and see if maybe this fares a little bit better. But yeah, Tuffnut deck building is like surprisingly complex. I did not expect it to be this hard. Like there's a lot of decks that you have to like account for. Like it feels like you have to have a plan for the aggressive decks, which want to get around your toughness tokens. You also have to have a plan for like the more arcane focused decks, which also are trying to get around your toughness tokens, like a similar way, right? So it almost feels like toughness is maybe just like not super great right now, but we'll give it another shot and see how it goes. Maybe I'm just not seeing the power level of the deck yet. So yeah, let's go ahead and give it a shot with this deck list. I think I also added some old leather, like I added a couple more reds and I guess the main board. So we had like CNCs. I think the old leather of them also makes a bit of sense, just having like the extra on hit value. So maybe we get some blocks from our opponent. And then Strongest Survive just being an on hit also seems quite relevant as well. So yeah, with this new game plan, let's give it a try and see if we do maybe a little bit better this time. Hey everyone, welcome back to more Flesh and Bad. Again, I think this is the second intro for the video, so I wanted to actually kind of tweak the initial deck list I have because I was not finding very much success with it. So I actually did some research and kind of looked into some of the other kind of Tuffnut builds. One of them is from I think Ben Dodd. I think they maybe did like a collaboration with another creator, like boosting Spendog. And this is kind of like a more like fatigue rock oriented list that's running a lot more blues. It has Romping Club at the board, but I think the main game plan is basically rock into most matchups, which I think I've actually found a little bit more success with kind of this style of list. Now I did want to examine kind of some other lists as well. So I think I saw this list on the Discord that was like running like more like Romping Club style, very low blue count, and just trying to do like red into Romping Club go again, but I feel like the numbers just like don't really work out in this style list. I don't know. Like I looked through a couple other Romping Club lists that are just running like a couple reds, some yellows, and then just trying to like do like a go get attack into Romping Club, and I feel like just like the number value proposition is not like super great. We'll definitely have to see how like the Tuffnut list kind of shake out, but I actually kind of want to try a rock build for today. So this list, let me see if I can pull it up. So this I think is Cat Pair list, who was also I think running rock maybe at some point. This might have been also like a little bit of an older list. But basically, I think you generally want to try to like main deck rock if you can, and just run like some of your good blues. Because like the value proposition I think tends to be a little bit better. So I think the list that I'm going to try today is kind of like a hybrid of, I guess, a lot of other people's lists. And I think this is also another list from Cat Pair, who's like running Romping Club, but also like a mix of reds and then some blues and yellows. Like I think there's a lot of different kind of directions that the Tuffnut deck building is going. So I'm kind of curious to see like where it actually ends up. But the list I want to try for today is basically kind of a hybrid between I think the original list from Ben Dodd and then also Cat Pair's list. So this list is very light on red. So the only reds we're running are Draws of Victory, which is basically just a nice go again attack with like a little bit of upside, the cheer upside obviously. And then for the most part, this list is just like all crappy yellows and blues. But the way that this deck works is basically you use cards like Vigorous Smash Up and some of your other like Vigor generators. Let me see if I can find. So there's like Energetic Impact. There's Wind Up the Crowd. Like all these cards make Vigor tokens. So it basically kind of reduces your fail state of like not having enough resources to swing rock. If you have a Vigor token, you're basically almost guaranteed to hit like either a yellow or a blue off the top, unless you have some Draws of Victory left in your deck. In that case, basically like the Vigor token is kind of like to mitigate the risk of you like hitting a yellow with your rock. So that's kind of like the core kind of game plan here. And we also have some kind of like go wide cards, or cards that can kind of help us go a little bit wider. So those cards are Clash of Agility and Agile Windup. So these two cards can kind of help smooth out some of the draws and let you go a little bit wider into decks that are not like attacking you as much. So with Clash of Agility and Agile Windup, you can kind of like discard them or block with them, and then create an Agility token, and then use that to kind of either play like something like a Thick-Hide Hunter into like maybe a Rock Swing. Basically, just any crappy attack into a Rock Swing. That's kind of the idea. And then for the sideboard, I've kind of included like a mix of some stuff from like Cat Pair and I think Ben Dodds or Spendogs or whoever's sideboard at this point. I have not kind of kept track with the authoring of a lot of these decks, but I've included the Arc Smash because I feel like I've struggled a bit, at least in the practice games, into like Dio and some of the go wide decks, which is also why the Quick Dodge Flexors are in here. And then Oasis and Arcane Compliance are almost exclusively for wizards like Kano Verdant. So I think those are the main sideboard, and then the overloads I think are almost exclusively for Gravy. So basically, like our core game plan is like the same into most everyone. It's just these couple of cards kind of help with some of the I think rougher matchups. I think you'll also see Scabs on the board. I think these are for matchups where you need to maybe roll a couple times, or you just like don't need the boots value. I think that's also quite reasonable. So yeah, that's kind of the sideboard. We're gonna give this deck a shot. I felt like I was doing a little bit better with this version of the deck because I won every game I played yesterday. But yeah, for my version of the deck, I think I probably maybe not played that first one. So maybe this one's maybe just a little bit better. All right, but yeah, with that, let's go ahead and see if we can get some games. All right, playing against a Lyath. I feel like this matchup is like kind of tough. First or second? I feel like I probably just want to go first just to have a setup. And I think we're just doing the normal game plan for this matchup, so nothing funky here, I think. Yeah, let's go ahead and try it. All right, so we have the Agile Wing to start us off. And then we could actually theoretically just Buck Wild into Rock if we wanted to and not set up the Agility. That actually might be better to set up the Agility here, so I think what I'm actually leaning towards is maybe we just try to throw the Good Nature Brutality. So I guess let's see what we hit off Tuffnut. Most likely it's going to be a yellow or a blue. If it's a red, also, I don't think a huge issue on turn one. All right, so we hit our yellow. And then I think we're just going to send the Good Nature Brutality, Arsenal the Buck Wild, and then hold on to the Agile Windup. And see if we can set up a little bit of a go wide turn. All right, seems like our opponent's just going to get some Fiddler Green value out of us. So that's fine. We'll go ahead and just take the opportunity to get the wind up on the board. I think this is kind of a fatigue matchup. The only problem with this matchup is that I think a lot of Lyath lists are running the one card that you can intimidate you up to like 3 times. So that card I think is pretty rough for Tuffnut to deal with, because if you get triple intimidated, obviously you can't use your toughness tokens. But we'll see what kind of version of Lyath this is. So playing Little Bigfoot, if there are 2 more cards, 3 across. Okay, so this is just coming in for 7 right now, pitching and leave them hanging for later. I think that makes sense. So what do we want to do here? I think potentially want to just Buck Wild pitching the Wrecker Romp, and then we can Buck Wild from Arsenal pitching the Wind Up. I guess that will still just eat the agility token, but then we can YOLO off the top with the Rock Swing. I feel like that might be the best play. We're kind of in a weird spot where we haven't fully used or we don't have like a Vigor token kind of getting chained. This might be a little bit awkward, but I think we'll take the gamble and try to just keep this hand. There's also maybe some merit to just not blocking, or to just like blocking with like Romp or something. I think that's also pretty reasonable. I think we'll take the opportunity here to see if we can go a little bit wider. So I think let's start with the Buck Wild. So there is a pretty big risk if we hit a yellow off the top. But once we have our Tunic counter up, it kind of mitigates that risk a bit. All right, seems like an interesting, this looks like a more kind of like fatigue style Lyath. But it's also gained a lot of life here. I do think the fatigue game in general does favor us though. So maybe this is not that bad for us. Let's then start the Buck Wild. This is, I think, a bit risky. I almost wonder if it was maybe better to... The problem with Buck Wilds is that the 3 cost is definitely a little bit like prohibitive. So like you have to hit a blue here if we want to Rock Swing. If it was a 2 cost, we could obviously like pitch a yellow and then make that a little bit better. All right. So time to gamble. All right, Pummel also getting pitched for later. That's good to note. All right, we hit a blue off the top, which is fantastic. And notably, this is also or I guess, no, sorry, this is not the blue 6 one. This is just normal blue. That was a pretty good turn for us. Obviously, the blue hit maybe was a little bit lucky. I almost wonder if it was worth risking that. But we are kind of just keeping our opponent off doing stuff, which is also nice. All right, so I think here... So you have our Tunic counter up. The only issue is, what are we doing in addition to the Tunic counter? So this seems like a decent opportunity to just go ahead and use the dig in and try to start chaining some toughness tokens. Yeah, I think I kind of don't mind that. Let's go ahead and pay... I kind of am almost debating just like getting rid of this disarm, just so we can swing rock here. I feel like that might be worth it. Leave it in the deck for later in case they're trying to go for like a more fatigue game plan. All right, no, it's YOLO, but it's not really YOLO because we do have Tunic counter up. The only fail state here is basically getting a red. All right, we hit the blue, so now we don't even need to use Tunic counter. So I think an interesting play pattern with this deck is that we're obviously like losing 1 value here if we like pull the Tunic. If we don't pull the Tunic and then just don't use gauntlets. I guess we couldn't use gauntlets anyways, because theoretically, if this is a blue 6, right? If this was a blue 6 and then we like were able to like Tunic counter gauntlets, like I think in general you should not be holding Tunic counter for gauntlets. Instead, you should be using Tunic to like fix your rock swings. At least that's the way that I've started thinking about this deck. Is like, I think you need the Tunic counter for situations where you hit a yellow off the top, and then that will let you swing rock, because like you're getting an extra 7 value in that case, right? Whereas this is only getting like 1 value every like 3 turns. So if this like prevents you from or if this can make you swing rock an extra time, you basically should hold on to it, is what I'm trying to say. All right, this is a really good hand for next turn. We can block with the dig in here. Yeah, it looks like they're just very fatigue oriented Lyath, which is kind of interesting. All right, looks like we'll just get our digging value here. So actually, I don't think I want to pay into the digging because we have the humble entrance plus heroic grit combo. So I think I'm going to try to use these two just to set up a bigger rock swing. And then if we get a yellow on top, we have our tunic failsafe, so we're in a pretty good spot. So let's not make any toughness tokens here because this can basically be used to make toughness. Yeah, and the scary part about this matchup is just the Intimidate, but I don't actually know if our opponent is on kind of like the Intimidate cards. At least we haven't seen them yet. All right, well, Heroic Grit. So this will make an additional toughness and then buff our rock by 4. And then the failstate here is hitting a red. Oh no. All right, so we might have gotten a little bit greedy, but that's fine. So this is the situation, I guess, where we hit a red off the top, like one of the 3 reds are our top, and then we kind of can't swing rock. So definitely not great there. But I think in general, you still kind of have to run the reds. I think this is part of the risk of this kind of game plan, is that sometimes you will just whiff off the 3 reds in the deck. All right, let's go ahead. So we have the energetic impact. So we can actually make a vigor token here with both of these. The question, I guess, is there anything better we can do? I kind of actually maybe like just using like the boots to the board to kind of clear this out of hand. We leave it in the deck and we can set up some toughness for next turn. But I kind of actually don't mind just using the boots here. Because then we can grit, pull tunic, and presumably swing rock again. We will not swing the Buckwild, or we not sink it just because we want to guarantee we're getting a blue so we don't have to pull tunic if we don't have to. All right, and they're just going to pummel this, so we have to discard our heroic grip, but all in all, I don't think that's the end of the world. We still get a rock swing here. So not too bad. All right, that is the last Sigil of Solace 2, so that's a bit comforting. They do still have a couple Fiddler's Green left, though, so you have to be a little bit cautious of this. The one nice thing about the Vigor, though, or I guess we can't use the Vigor for the Gauntlets either because we're not pitching a blue 6, but if we did hit a blue 6 off the top, then obviously the Vigor token would kind of help a bit with that. Actually, I wonder if that was maybe an argument to sinking the Buckwild so that we try to, since we have the Vigor token set up, we should try to sink it to find the 6. And maybe that will let us either use, if it's blue 6, we use our gauntlets. If it's not a blue 6, then we get an extra toughness. So I think that was actually a little bit of a punt on my part, like missing potentially 1 value there. All right, we only have 1 more Fiddler's Green to worry about. All right, so this is, I think, a pretty good Thick Hide Hunter turn. This also kind of feels like a pummel. We did see 1 pummel pitch, so this could be another one. So I think here we're just going to potentially discard this on our turn, or discard this in response to the Kite Hunter. So let's order the triggers so that we do the Kite Hunter last. We'll see what's on top. All right, so digging on top. I feel like since we're setting up a Vigor, we don't really want that, so we're going to sink that this time. And I think we're going to discard this to make another Vigor here. All right, they're Lyath thing just to make another Might. Seems good. So here, because we have 2 Vigor set up, we really want to hit a 6 off the top, so we get the extra point of value here, and we also get the extra point of value out of the gauntlets. So a yellow 6 would be kind of ideal here. All right, blue Ripple Away, not super good. Actually, I think from Ben and Dodd's list, I moved this to main board because there are a lot of decks that just are incidentally making tokens. And I kind of want to free up some sideboard space for like the Wizard matchup, which I think is going to be one of Tuffnut's like harder matchups. This could also maybe move back to sideboard at some point. This could also just be me making the list a little bit worse. I tend to do that a lot while I'm still trying to figure out new heroes. All right, Song of Sinew is one of the better ways to kind of go wide in this style of deck. So I think here we're just going to double block with the Buckwild and the Vigorous matchup, and then we can Song of Sinew to basically pump our rock here. If we get pummeled again, I don't think I really care. We lose our Song of Sinew, but not the end of the world. Yeah, this is fine. So they get over for 6, we lose the song, but we still have the Vigor token set up, which is nice. And we revealed a dig-in, so we will actually get the toughness token value here, which is also quite nice. All right, let's go ahead and pitch to Tuffnut. Still leaving that tuna counter up just so we have it in case of emergency. But yeah, this is a very interesting style of Lyath list. Like, they're running less pumps and more just kind of like big Guardian or small big Guardian attacks, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, I feel like I've not really seen anything from Lyath kind of like what our opponent's doing. But maybe it's like a more kind of like fatigue-oriented list. Definitely a little bit behind in terms of life totals. I wonder if there's honestly maybe even merit to like using our flesh bag that one turn that we thought we were going to get pummeled, but I feel like they were probably going to find an excuse to pummel us anyways. All right, so leave them hanging. We'll get intimidated, but I don't think they're doing anything else this turn. So this is not bad as long as they're not running that one card that is able to basically the one card that's able to intimidate us 3 times. I think we can actually do pretty well this matchup. So let's start by making some toughness. If they intimidate us in response to this, it's going to be a little bit awkward, but I kind of hope they don't. All right, so now since they didn't intimidate, the Buckwild is going to be really strong here. So now we basically are guaranteed to hit off the top, unless we find one of our reds again, which would be, I think, a little unfortunate. All right, it seems like they're just maybe holding up Oasis here. Yeah, it seems like a very, very fatigue-oriented style Lyath, like running the last-ditch efforts in addition to some other stuff. Very interesting. Like, I imagine they might even be on multiple copies of, like, Withstand and stuff. All right, let's go ahead and pitch top card. All right, so there's the Withstand. Makes sense. All right, another Jaws. These Jaws have been killing me this game. Unfortunate. So I guess, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to swing rock another time here. Maybe there's merit, actually, to... I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter. We could have just, like, paid an extra one into Gauntlets if we wanted to... I wonder if pitching first made more sense. The problem is if we pitch a blue non-6 first, then we don't get to Buckwild. And we also don't get to rock. Or we don't get the Goganot Buckwild. So maybe I'm just getting some bad variance here. Totally normal, I guess. Right, there's the Mocking Blow. So just coming in for 5. I guess in this case, let's try to Clash of Agility, and then maybe we can use one of these two to have like a more go-white turn if we hit like a blue or yellow off the top. So assuming we win the Clash here, we're actually in pretty good shape. Okay, so they do have Leave Them Hanging, but we do have a good Nature Brutality, so we can actually get around the Leave Them Hanging here. And they cannot respond to the Agility token, notably. So the way we start this out, I think, is if we do Good Nature Brutality first. So they can't intimidate this, and then we go wide with Rock on the back. All right, we have, I think, one more pummel we got to worry about too. But other than that, I think we're actually doing pretty well on the fatigue front. All right, there's the second Leave Them Hanging. I think we saw them pitch one pretty early on. But fortunately, they're not going to get the Intimidate value here. So it looks like they're maybe going to try to set these Leave Them Hangings up on the same turn. So coming in for +9 just already on the board. Definitely a bit scary. All right, so go ahead and pull our Rock. We'll just hope that they don't have that triple Intimidate card, because I think that card is probably the scariest thing right now, given their board state. I think Craterhoof is also a bit scary. We still have a decent amount of armor to work with, though, so I'm not too afraid. It's more so just like what other threats they kind of have left in their deck at this point. Alright, Thump's a pretty good one. So that will have Dominate. Can actually just dump our hand to this. And maybe try to find like a blue. So it's defend together with a card with 6 or more base. So we can't unfortunately use this. So maybe the strat here is to do something like this. So we double set up our toughness tokens. They're not representing pummel just yet. So I think I kind of like maybe even just cashing in a little bit of the gauntlets value. So let's go ahead and do something like this, I think. I think we're just going to pitch our entire hand here. And then we'll see if we can hit off the Tuffnut. If we don't hit off the Tuffnut, that's fine. There's also maybe some merit to just doing the Clash of Agility, but the Agility token obviously next turn not super useful, so maybe the 5 Toughness is a little bit better for us. Alright, we're a little low on armor at this point, but that's not the end of the world. Alright, let's go ahead and see if we can get blue. Blue would obviously be best case scenario here. Oh, blue 6 is also very, very good for us, because then we get the extra point of toughness. So yeah, I think this deck is kind of like a weird, like, gambling deck sometimes, especially when you don't have Tunic up. Like, hitting a Rock Swing randomly off the top is obviously quite good for us. But we are seeing them kind of lose some threats here if they're looking to block like this. Like, it does feel like maybe we're doing kind of what they're doing a little bit better, but I guess it kind of depends what else they have left in the tank. So I expect we have one more pummel, maybe one or two more mocking blows. We still have a couple little Bigfoots we haven't seen, some 2 steps ahead. So it seems like they're on more of this kind of like fatigue-oriented Lyath, which is a very interesting kind of style of deck. I imagine they probably don't want to also send a big attack into a bunch of toughness tokens next turn. So yeah, having 6 toughness tokens is quite nice, and Disarm is also very good with the toughness here, so we can actually get them to now bottom a card from their hand if we want. Which I think it's interesting. The only issue with this is that, well, actually, Song of Sinew 95% of the time will like fix our hand to the point where we can get a blue. Because we can basically restack the order of this, right? So I think we're just going to disarm here, make them bottom a card. I imagine they probably weren't doing much with that card anyways, but if it was like a... maybe if they were like feigning a pummel or something, who knows? Alright, so let's start with the Grit, and then I think we're almost all but guaranteed to get a blue off the Song of Sinew. If we don't hit a blue, I don't think there's much else we could have been doing this turn. Alright, so we want to draw these 3. Or actually, Agile 1. So I guess we're riffing off of this anyway. So let's go ahead and whiff off the ripple away, I think, and then we'll draw those 3. Because that will, the red jaws will basically let us have another pretty good turn next turn. The one thing that's funny about this here is also like the 3 intellect. You do actually, I think, kind of have to be good at pitch stacking. Like if I knew where those red jaws were that I pitched earlier, I'd probably be a bit more confident here. Like there are people who can keep track of like where exactly like these red jaws would be. I'm probably not one of those people. So maybe this deck is not a me deck, but I think the deck is quite cool. But I think it's just kind of ironic that the 3 intellect hero, you have to like be pretty okay at pitch stacking, right? So a little bit funny. All right, this is a good hand though. So jaws. So we're at a lower life total, so that's good. So I think we're just gonna Clash of Agility to see what's on top. And hopefully I'll be able to show why the jaws are in the deck here. So they can't pummel this, so I don't think there's any real reason like flashback or anything. So I think we'll just take our value here, see what the top of their deck is. So they have a Fiddler's Green, we have the Ripple on top. So we will get the Agility token here, which I guess just makes this guaranteed go again. I mean, I think it was already guaranteed because we're at lower life, right? All right, let's start with the jaws. So the nice thing here is I think we almost are probably back around to their leave them hangings, if I remember correctly. Like we're getting pretty close to stack at this point. At least their stack. I think our stack is kind of like a bit slower by nature of only drawing 3 cards per turn. Or I guess we are technically drawing the same number of cards. We're just like pitching them, right? So maybe that's actually not true. Like maybe we are kind of hitting stack at a similar rate. I guess they draw 5 cards though, so no, it's still they're still faster, right? I guess that makes sense. All right, so we'll get our toughness token. We'll get our go again. So this is why Jaws is in the deck, even though it's a red. Like I think you want to try to minimize your reds as much as possible, just because rock swing is like so important. All right, if we hit a blue 6 here, that would be ideal, but unfortunately we don't hit it. The blue 6 just allows us to like also activate Gauntlets, which is a pretty big deal. So we're getting like 2 additional value if you hit like a blue 6 there. That's why I think they're like so important to try to like leave in the deck if possible. Like I don't think we have any in graveyard right now, but ideally if you can, I think try to like pitch them for later. All right, go ahead and pass it back. All right, so there's the leave them hanging. Definitely a bit scary. So I think here we're just double blocking. There is maybe some merit to like just setting up toughness tokens. I feel like that's not even entirely necessary. I think we're just going to pitch the agile windup, try to hit something off the top. If it's yellow, obviously we just pull Tunic. And yeah, I think taking 2 damage here I think is probably fine. Not pay. So I'm kind of curious what their win cons are at this point. That I'm not sure. It seems almost like kind of like a Boats Marlin style of Lyath, which is interesting. Like just playing a lot of the value cards as opposed to doing the big disruptive thing. Which I can kind of understand, I think. Like it looks like they're not even running any of the like the yellows that they printed in the set, like the like yellow Spinal Crush, like the on-hit discard one, the pseudo like Crippling Crush style attack. All right, so we finally get a 6 off the top. So this will give us an excuse to now use our Tunic. So you might have like noticed that we're losing like maybe 2 value over the course of the game by not using the Tunic, but since we pulled the Tunic on a turn that we needed to swing rock, like we're making up for that value, which is really interesting. Like we're basically just using Tunic as a tool to guarantee that we're able to swing our rock every turn. All right, so it looks like they might be trying to go for last ditch effort as kind of like their win con here. I did forget about those. So maybe if they can get to no cards in library and then set that up, maybe that's their kind of core game plan here. All right, let's go ahead and do this, and then we'll try to maybe pitch these on our turn. All right, we get a yellow off the top, but that's fine since we're making a bigger token. So we'll not sink this, I think. All right, they have the pummel here. So this is the last pummel out of the deck too. So like we're only taking 3 damage here. I think this is actually kind of okay for us. We're not even having to discard here, which is also, I think, pretty big for us. All right, so let's go ahead and set up our toughness tokens. We'll wind up the crowd. And then there's actually maybe some merit to like setting up the Vigor last turn so we can get an extra charge out of the Gauntlets. But I feel like chaining the Vigor, especially when we don't have Tunic up, is maybe a better use of our resource. I feel like there's a lot of things to think about with this deck, which is like, I don't know. I feel like this is a deck where you actually do have to kind of think about like how you're maximizing your value. Like you really don't care very much about like what your opponent's doing, but like you have to think about like what your game plan is, like what you're trying to do. It's actually like I think a super interesting deck. It's almost feels like it's just a kind of rock swinging deck, but like how you get to the rock swing, I think is the interesting part. It's almost like a little bit of a puzzle. All right, so we got some decent toughness set up for next turn. This arm could also be pretty nice for us here. So it looks like their game plan is to like try to chain these emboldens or something. Very interesting. All right, they do have the Terror Center as well. So what is the follow-up here? Okay, it's a power play from Arsenal. Sure. So we unfortunately can't block everything here, so we're probably going to end up like losing our Song of Sinew. Which is fine. I think maybe... I mean, there's still not like a really great reason to like just throw our armor in front of this. Like we're going to be discarding anyways. So I think this is just fine for us. So let's go ahead and I guess just discard the Agile Windup for ourselves. I imagine we're not going to be using the Agility token, but it's, I guess, maybe best practice or whatever. All right, we'll get rid of the Song of Sinew. So they basically did discard like 2 cards from hand. So the question is whether or not these last-ditch efforts are going to be the key to kind of winning the game here. All right, let's see what we get off the top. If we hit a blue 6, obviously we get 2 gauntlets. If we don't, then we just swing a rock. And they are now having to give us at least maybe their tunic here or like a couple pieces of armor or something here. The Towering Titans are also quite interesting. I feel like this, like, if they are able to get to their last-ditch efforts, this might be pretty good for them. I guess that's the only question I have is, are they going to be able to resolve them? Guess we'll find out. All right, so there's little Bigfoot. So now we can just block out a bit and hopefully just set up the... we can set up a Vigor here. Actually, I'm wondering if maybe it's just better to block like this. So you go to 3, we set up the Agile Windup on our turn, pitch the top card, maybe get some Gauntlets value. So we take 4 here, swing rock. I think this is actually fine. All right, so let's set up the Agility on our turn. And how many Jaws do we have left, actually? Oh, we might be getting close to our Jaws. Yeah, the red Jaws actually might be really bad here. The top card is red Jaws. We might lose. All right, not red Jaws. That's very good for us. So now I think we just swing rock. And they're having to give us at least 1 card here. But yeah, we have 2 red Jaws in the deck, which you have to be a little bit careful about. I don't know if we can necessarily afford to play around it, but we'll do our best to at least try, I think. Yeah, Withstand is an interesting one. Kind of like a 3 for 7 if you kind of think about it. But you can also kind of play it as like a 2 for 6. Like if you don't want to activate the Rampart. So we're still getting 2 cards out of our opponent here, which is nice. And if their turn is mid, I think we're actually kind of in okay shape here. Still have some armor to work with. I'd say I'm not too scared. And they're gonna Lyath with the Oasis. Oasis is also kind of a funny card against Rock. I've had like multiple people try to play Oasis on Rock and it just like does not work. All right, so there's our Jaws. So that's good. We can actually put the Wrecker Romp into the pitch and then block with the Buckwild, I think is our best play. We are leaking a point of value here. But I think it's better... Like, if we're leaking a point of value, but we're potentially getting a point of value out of the Gauntlet. So I think offensive value is actually what we care about more here. I don't think they can do anything to pump this realistically, right? They already activated Lyath, so they can't, like, make this any bigger. Or I guess that's not even how Lyath works, right? You don't... That's Lyath's Charm I'm thinking about. So this only buffs the attack. So I think we're actually, like, pretty safe here. So we'll follow 2, and then we can play Jaws, and then hope to kind of convert off that. So even if we hit a red here, actually, off the top, if we hit our other Jaws, we still are going to be able to swing rock here. So yeah, I was basically not winning any games with that other version of Tuffnut, and then I played this version, and then I just like started winning every game. I don't know, maybe I just like don't understand the club version. I feel like maybe there's some validity to it. I don't know. I'm not a self-purporting Tuffnut expert, but it felt like the club version of Tuffnut, I just like did not understand how it was meant to be played. So now we get to Gauntlets and Swinging Rock. So another nice thing to note here is because we pitched the record, like you don't have to pitch off Tuffnut to turn on your Gauntlets. You can just like turn it on with just like sending like a go wide attack, which is why I think the Jaws are in the deck. All right, so we get them down to 2. They can't necessarily swing anything here unless they have like a 0 cost or something in Arsenal. All right, and then we have the Buckwild. Interesting. A little bit of a weird hand. I think what we're going to try to do is hit like a yellow 6 off the top so that we can Buck Wild, and then maybe just send dig in on the back half of that. So this might not be a turn where we're able to swing Rock, but that's still fine. If we can Buck Wild, I think we're actually in pretty decent shape. So we hit a 6. This is fantastic. So now we get to Buck Wild, discard the Ripple away, and then pull Tunic to send Rock. Or alternatively, we can just send the Ripple away. I guess it might depend on how they block. Like if the breakpoints are... I imagine the breakpoints are not going to be in such a way where the Rock swing is worse than Ripple away. So I imagine we're just discarding this and pulling Tunic, but there is some risk to pulling Tunic. So it's definitely maybe something to think about here. Like, is it better to send an extra 3 damage if we can send Ripple away without pulling Tunic? I think that's the question. Oh, we actually, hold on, sorry. We probably could have discarded the Ripple away in response to that Might token, but I guess it doesn't really matter that much. So actually, I think we should just take the not greedy approach and just send the Rock here off Tunic. I think this makes sense, but it does feel bad going off Tunic. But I feel like our deck is like majority blues at this point. So like maybe this forces like 2 last ditch efforts out of hand or something, and then we're in pretty good shape. Or maybe it forces like all cards out of hand. That would also be ideal, or like Tunic or something. All right, I guess they are able to use the second half of their skull caps. I did forget about that. So maybe here they're just gonna like swing Titan's Fist. All right, so the Good Natured Brutality is actually a little bit awkward here. So I think in this case, we're just going to try to YOLO it off the top. Yeah, I am almost debating if sending the Ripple away last turn was actually maybe better. We don't have an agility set up, so the Good Natured Brutality is also like a little bit weird. Let's... Could actually do is we could like block 3 with armor here. This guarantees that we're basically able to swing because we don't have any reds left in the deck. And then we can do this into Rock. That forces cards out of hand. So maybe actually blocking with the Good Natured Brutality here and the rest of our armor is like actually the play. I feel like maybe sending the Ripple away last turn was like actually just better, right? Maybe. Like maybe we should have like left ourselves open to like getting set up a bit more. All right, so let's Jaws. So we aren't going to have Tunic for the rest of the game, but that's fine. I feel like our deck is majority blues at this point. I think we still have a couple yellows still floating around, though. All right, so they're going to Oasis the Jaws. That's fine. And then we're getting a guaranteed swing out of the Rock here. They still have to give us a card here as well. Oh, wait, because they gained... Or no, they were at a... Oh, we're not actually getting a swing here. Oh, that was my bad, I guess. Oh, if that was the case, we shouldn't have blocked the way we did last turn. Oh, I'm dumb. I'm sorry. I always forget that this... Or I guess we need to cheer response to this, right? That's how we do this? Okay, yeah. So, no, this still kind of works out. So we cheer in response to this. We should be hitting a 6 here, ideally. I think we still have some non-6s left, though. So maybe this was like a riskier line than I initially thought. All right, we hit the 6. So I think there was a way we get punished there, for sure. So what we should be doing is we should be we should cheer first, so that if we get cheered, this gets go again, and then we swing Rock on the back. That's what we should be doing. Because I think there's a trigger here. I don't know if this is state-based, where if you cheer at any point in the turn, it gets go again, or if you have to cheer before that trigger goes on this. Because I know there's like a trigger here. Maybe that's the attacking trigger, though, and maybe this is actually just state-based. Interesting. I think it might be state-based. So I guess we didn't have to cheer right then. We could have cheered after they like go to blocks or whatever. Some interesting sequencing here, I think, that I'm probably messing up. All right, pulling the Tunic. All right, blocking this out fully. All right, we get to follow up the Rock swing. So I feel like maybe last turn there was a better play than what we ended up doing. Not 100% on that. All right, so they go to 1. They have 1 card in hand. And we have a pretty good follow-up here. So they swing 4. They have 3 last-ditch efforts, I think, still left in the deck. And then we block with the Clash. And then we don't know if we're going to get an agility token. So actually, maybe what we should do is just block with this just for safety. So that we're guaranteeing a vigor and an agility. Because I feel like the agility token at this point like does not matter. We should just be trying to get like a second vigor. All right, so we have a ripple away on top. So we actually lose the Clash here, which means that I think for our purposes, we should actually set up the vigor. Or no, the vigor doesn't even help us. So we should do this on our turn, I think. So we lost the Clash there. Wait, did this not? Oh, this doesn't have 6 or more, right? So then these wouldn't block together. That makes sense. So let's now pitch the top card, discard the Wind Up the Crowd, and then swing rock. I think that's the play. Because even if we set up the vigor token this turn, like there's no way to use it because we don't have a 6 in pitch. So now I think their best play here is just sending one last ditch effort or something. They can't pitch at this point, otherwise they can't play out their last ditch efforts, which is kind of interesting. I'm trying to think of what we have left in the deck at this point. So I think we have one of these energetic impacts, which I think we just pitched away, didn't we? And then we have some vigorous smash up. And yeah, it seems like maybe they saw the writing on the wall there. So I think they were trying to go for like a last ditch effort play. And they also had Terrace on their arsenal, which is kind of terrifying. So yeah, maybe they just like barely didn't get there. I think that one turn where we gave up armor was wrong. I think we maybe should have blocked out a little bit more and then tried to take a more like conservative turn. But this is I think how like the deck is supposed to be played, especially in these like long grindier fatigue matchups. Like feels like sending rock over and over again is just like the way to kind of like extract value out of this hero, like doing like your like 15, 17 point value turn cycles and just kind of trying to win off the back of that. All right, let's see if we can get another one. All right, playing against a Pleiades. Let's give this a shot. I don't think we want... I think Boots to the Board is probably fine. So let's just do our normal kind of rock game plan. I think the sideboard here is like for very, very specific heroes. So in general, I think you should just be trying to run the main 60 into most heroes, I feel like. Let's give it a shot, though. There are some interesting inclusions that I included over some other cards. Like I saw some Clash of Agilities, which I thought was a really interesting card. We'll see if the Clash of Agilities end up being good, but they at least seem to be for me. All right, so opponent's going to start off with the Imposing Visage. I kind of hope they do send an attack here, because obviously we can dig in. If they don't send an attack, I don't think that's the end of the world. We can just, like, send dig in, maybe even Arsenal Humble Entrance. I think we want to maybe try to combo the Humble Entrance with the True Grit, ideally. We could also just like discard this Ripple away. But I don't know if that's entirely necessary. All right, so let's go ahead and just send our dig in here. I guess there's maybe some merit to setting up the tokens now. But I think for now, let's just go ahead and just send our 6 value. We're not getting a rock swing here, so we're like losing a point, but can't always swing rock. I think for now I'd rather just set up the Humble Entrance in Arsenal. All right, so let's go ahead and set that up. All right, opponent is coming in with the Boulder Drop. So very likely to be a case where we get pummeled here, but that's fine. I think to try to mitigate the pummel, what we should probably do is just like double block like this, and then try to bait them to using it, and then we can wind up the crowd. I guess the problem with this is that we're not really trying to threaten the on-hit here, so they might not even like go for the pummel. Because like as it is now, they're already getting the Boulder Drop value. But I imagine they might just want to use the pummel anyways. So what do we reveal on top? We revealed an Agile Windup. So in that case, we definitely want to just like discard this just to set up the Vigor token for next turn, because we're going to need it to send the rock. And we'll basically just kind of prevent this like these discard effects by having no cards in hand, which is really cool. All right, let's go ahead and pitch top card, which we know is an Agile Windup. Not making much good use out of the agility tokens, but I think the agility tokens are kind of just like a nice to have if the turn lines up in such a way. Like if you have an agility token, your opponent doesn't send very much at you, then you can kind of capitalize on your 3-card hand and send like maybe just a crappy like 2 for 6 into rock, and that's kind of how you get the value out of your agility tokens. They are 2 blocks, which is like a little rough, but the deck blocks very well just with the toughness token, so it's not really the biggest deal. All right, we'll draw back up. Vigorous Matchup, I think, is one of the better cards in this deck, just because like having the ability to set up Vigor tokens mitigates the risk of using Rock. Song of Sinew also quite nice as well. All right, so they are technically threatening Pummel here, so I think this might be a good excuse as any to just give the flashback here. They might not have anything, but I think it's still worth at least trying to stop it if they have it. So we'll go ahead and clash and flashback. They could also just have another one of these Suspenses Killing Me, but looks like they didn't have that there. All right, and then we have a Humble Entrance on top. They have Cries of Encore, so we actually lose the clash there. It's not even that bad though. What we actually do is like Song of Sinew and Agile Windup on our turn. So I guess actually the Humble Entrance is not that bad. So let's we can also save it for later. I guess with Song of Sinew, we want as many non-sexes, so let's actually go ahead and sink the Humble Entrance for now. We should be able to hit another blue here, and if we don't, we still have Tunic. So I think it actually makes a bit of sense to sink there. All right, we'll go ahead and set up our Agile Windup for next turn. They do have another Confidence here for what it's worth, so that could be a bit rough for us. All right, they're going to play an Up on the Pedestal in response here. So maybe they're trying to buy back a Boulder Drop. Okay, it makes sense. So, and maybe also trying to keep a counter on this Suspenses Killing Me. Yeah, it seems like the core kind of Pleiades game plan loop is to try to like move your counters from this aura to this aura, like your bad kind of like auras that you want to go away to your good auras that you want to stick around. All right, let's go in Song. We should be finding a blue here ideally, and blue 6 is fantastic. So let's go ahead and keep the Jaws, Clash, and Vigor smash up, and then we'll top the Wrecker Romp. So what this will let us do is now just rock. We could also set up the Toughness tokens if we want here. This actually might not be a bad turn to just set the Toughness tokens up because we know that they have the Confidence as well. So I think this actually might be fine to just use them here. So let's set those up, pitch top card of our deck, which is a blue 6, which is fantastic. And then we'll swing in the rock here. So ideally next turn, I think we want to just hopefully block with 1 card and then not get Boulder dropped. We do get Boulder dropped. It's like a little unfortunate. All right, so they didn't have a Pummel last turn, which is at least nice. So I think they can't. I don't think they can actually send the Boulder drop with a Pummel here. All right, just gonna go tutor for an Aura. I've actually seen a lot of debate about Imposing Visage and whether or not you should run it in a lot of the new kind of Guardians. Actually, I'm not sure myself. It kind of does feel like you can just run like a random Suspense Aura over it, and that might be fine. Oh, did they get that the Cries of Encore instead of the Boulder drop? Or wait, what happened to the Boulder drop? Interesting. Did I miss what happened there? All right, maybe I'm imagining things. So they can replay out an Aura of Suspense, which would be like Up on a Pedestal or Superstar here, which I don't think are that scary. So I think here, let's go ahead and do the Vigorous Smash Up. We could also give another point of block here if we wanted to stop them from playing that out. How bad is this? They basically get another Confidence token, which they already have, or they can rebuy back their Cries of Encore. I think we don't care, do we? I think it's fine to just let them have this. So yeah, let's see what they do. So we get a wind up the crowd. They have a boulder drop on top. So we lose the clash. They get a vigor token. Oh, they put it on top. That's why. Okay, so the boulder drop was on top of the deck. They didn't put it into hand. Or I thought they like drew back up after they put it on top, but apparently not. Okay, so that makes sense. So we'll leave this on top. So we'll not sink here, and then we'll Jaws Victory into Rock Swing. We're having a little bit of redundancy, I think, between our we're having a bit of redundancy, I think, between the agility and the jaws here, but I think it's still fine. If we got that bigger token, it would also been kind of nice, but can't always have everything. I feel like in general against Pleiades, we're pretty favored in terms of like winning our clashes. So a little bit surprising, I think, to lose there. I think like we're basically losing on their random attacks as opposed to like their auras, right? But yeah, we'll just start off with the jaws here, which will already have to go again because we have the agility. It looks like they're gonna maybe hold a hand that's like red boulder drop plus something else, like maybe just a blue. All right, and they've got their prism board state over here. But it still kind of doesn't matter because they still need to like capitalize on these auras. I guess they're gonna set up like a tension in the air. Maybe that's what's gonna bonk us next turn. But it should still be fine. So we'll get our toughness and we'll also get our rock swing. That's why I think the blue sixes are just so important in this deck. They just like randomly give you like 8 value as opposed to 7, which is quite nice. All right, this is a great excuse as any to just use our dig in. So they do have the confidence token, so we can't like full block this or anything. But I think here what we're gonna just do is just like pitch into the dig in and maybe even use our boots here and just pay 5 to set up 5 toughness. I think that's probably the best play. It does feel weird to like use our boots like this. I think it should be fine. So let's go ahead and use 3 here. Then we'll use 2 here. For what it's worth, they're also going to be getting another confidence token when this leaves the battlefield. So I guess they're going to have a turn where they're not on confidence. Unless they want to like do some more shenanigans and pop it now. All right, let's go ahead and hopefully swing rock here. I feel like this deck, what this deck reminds me of, and I also played against a Decimator Olympia yesterday. This is just a better Decimator deck, right? Because like rock just is higher value than Decimator most of the time. It's just finding that Decimator value is like the tricky part. All right, so this is a great use of our Tunic here. So again, just pull that. I think you still like have to unfortunately run cards that are just like there's not enough like 6 power stuff that will like fully turn on your hero power. Like you kind of just need some of these like actions that will not make toughness sometimes. But normally it's pretty fine. So wait, why did they get 3 toughness? What did I miss here? Turning point? If you would cheer this turn. Wait, why did they make 3 toughness? Oh, from the boots to the board. Maybe that's what it was. Oh, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. We can actually disarm them here if we want to, which is kind of rude. Then we can like set up a vigor token, discard the ripple away. Yeah, I think this is the play since we don't have agility up. We're just gonna overblock this. Disarm them, get that last card out of hand. Oh shit. We did that wrong. Sorry. We do need to we need to disarm first. Or we need to block with the disarm first, and then we need to block with the energetic, because otherwise the energetic will eat the token there. Something easier to do in paper than I guess Talishar. You have to like remember the ordering of your cards. Yep, so this is fine. All right, go ahead and just discard that ripple away. And activate the Tuffnut. Right, unfortunately it's not a 6, so we don't get the Gauntlet Swing, but I feel like the Gauntlet Swing is actually like semi-rare. Like you have to have like a bigger token and then pitch like a yellow 6 most of the time, or you have to pitch like a blue 6, so you're not always going to be able to activate Gauntlets, but I think if you're just setting rock, that's like where the majority of your value is coming from. So it looks like our opponent might be dropping pretty low here. Maybe they're going to like Oasis this. Okay, Active Glory, also interesting. It's still pretty scary spot for our opponent to be in. they're going to be taking 6 here, especially when they had 3 toughness up. Maybe the hand just didn't work out that way. All right, so there's the Cries of Encore. So they can get an Aura of Suspense out of their graveyard, which would be one of these pedestals or maybe a superstar. I guess they can't play the superstar, so it's probably just a pedestal, which I don't think we really care about. And if we don't care about it, I think we should actually just take the 14 here, play a Buck Wild, and then swing Rock almost guaranteed. The only downside would be hitting a red, but we've seen 1 red already, so we have 2 left in the deck. So I think the risk is pretty minimal if we want to just do that. So yeah, I'd say let's actually do that instead. So we're going to take the 14 here and let them just have the value. Like, there is a world where we just, like, block out here. But I think it's maybe higher upside to do this. Because I just, like, don't think we care about them playing this back out. All right, they put the Boulder Drop back on top, which, again, I don't think we mind. Then we'll overpitch here, so we're floating 1 to send the Buck Wild. This is one of those nice kind of hands where if you have like a yellow, a blue, and a Buck Wild, you can like overpitch and then guaranteed send Rock on the back end. If we hit a blue here, what we can actually do is also activate the Gauntlets because we have 6 in pitch. All right, so yep, perfect. So that's kind of why the Gauntlets are also kind of in this deck, just because you'll sometimes randomly get a point of value just based on your kind of like pitch sequencing. And we've got our opponent, I think, pretty on the ropes at this point. All right, so I think our opponent saw the writing on the wall there, so a little bit unfortunate there, but I think, like, in general, like, what you want to do is just swing Rock as much as possible and then just kind of, like, try to outvalue your opponent over kind of, like, the course of the game. I think, like, the kind of trick to this deck, I think it's more of, like, a deck building problem, is, like, trying to figure out ways to get go again. So I think, like, you kind of unfortunately do need these, like, draws in the deck just for a little bit of more, like, kind of go wide action. But they are sometimes, I saw maybe in the first game, like, pretty bad whiffs. And then I think you also just kind of like need just random ways to make like tokens. So your agility tokens, your vigor tokens are both super important if you're able to like get your opponent in a spot where they block out, and then that you try to do like kind of a go wide turn to kind of punish that. That's kind of like the ideal scenario there. And yeah, I think there are a lot of like interesting cards in this deck, like Song of Sinew, like the non buff card or like the non-6 cards are really interesting because they have to be like playable and good. Like you have to be able to like dump them out of hand to like play it into Rock, which is also really neat. So yeah, I'd say there's a lot of like interesting deck building things here. I'm definitely curious to see if like the Rock builds or the club builds like end up being which one ends up being better. But at least for now, it seems to me like the kind of Rock builds maybe just have a better value proposition or like a more consistent value proposition of just swinging Rock like every turn. I think that's kind of like the core gameplay loop of Tuffnut is just figuring out how you're going to swing the weapon every turn. All right, so I think that's going to be the deck for the day. So again, this is inspired by, I think, Ben Dodds or Boosting Spend Dogs. I'm not entirely sure if they're the same person, maybe different people. I think they're different people. But yeah, inspired by one of their 2 deck lists that I think they posted on one of their videos. So I'll probably put a link to that video too, which I think is quite helpful. And then also, I think there are some interesting other decks that I was taking a look at. So like we had some Cat Fearless lists that I think were pretty inspirational to me. So yeah, I think there's still a lot of interesting things to look at in Tuffnut builds. So I'm definitely going to be on the lookout for how I guess this hero develops over the course of like Super Slam and stuff. But if you want to play my deck, which I think I kind of like this version of it, I'm still going to like tweak some cards here and there. But I think that this maybe is what I would try to bring to like a Pro Quest if I want to bring Tuffnut. Although I don't know. I don't know. It seems a little bit. I imagine he's going to be like somewhat well represented though, because supposedly his KO matchup is like not that bad, or it's like pretty good. So I'm kind of curious to see like if the Tuffnut ends up being like a key player in Super Slam kind of meta. So yeah, thank you all for watching. That was again a little bit of a deck building kind of adventure journey, whatever you call it. So hope you all enjoyed, and thank you all for watching. And a special thank you to all the folks who decided it would be a good idea to give us $2 on Patreon. We really appreciate the support, but it's obviously never required.